Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Luke, and welcome to Luke I'm on TV. Today, I thought I'd do a video regarding my top 10 favorite movies. Now, when I say favorite movies, I'm not necessarily talking about what I think are the best movies. That would actually be a slightly different list. Movies that would be on that list would include The Godfather, Dances with Wolves, Braveheart, like those kinds of movies. I really like all those movies, but they're just not movies that I would consider to be my favorites. Movies that are my favorites usually tend to have a story with characters that I just feel like I can really relate to. And they're usually movies that I feel like I need to watch at least once a year. So those are the kinds of movies that are usually my favorites. Now, when I do my top 10 lists, not just for this video, but for all other videos, I'm not really going to be counting down from number 10 to number 1. I just think that would be a lot of work. And also, what could be my number 3 today could be my number 1 tomorrow, and vice versa. So I'm not going to do that. I'll just give you my top 10, and then we'll just talk about each of them. So the first movie I'm going to give you here is Pump Up the Volume. This stars Christian Slater and Samantha Mathis. This is a very cool early 90s movie. In this movie, Christian Slater's character, he's a new student at a high school. And this school has a lot of issues. There's a lot of students being either suspended or kicked out for no good reason. And he's kind of a shy, quiet kid. He kind of keeps to himself, doesn't really have any friends yet. But he's kind of living a double life because late at night he's a pirate radio DJ. And but although at the school nobody knows this because he doesn't really know anybody and he's keeping his identity hidden. So um, on this pirate radio station, he plays all the music that he wants to play, and he says all the things that he wants to say without any censorship. And he gains a following at the school. But as time goes on, he starts to just talk more and more about the issues at the school. So eventually that causes some problems, and then all of a sudden parents and teachers start to listen in, and then eventually there's a backlash. So I'm not going to give you the whole story, but it's a very, very good movie, very cool movie. Dialogue's pretty good in this movie. The casting is good, and also the soundtrack's pretty good too. So yeah, it's one of my favorite movies. I like it. The next movie I'm going to give you here is Hackers. This stars Johnny Lee Miller and Angelina Jolie. This one came out in 1995. I actually have a really cool story regarding this movie. Prior to this movie coming out in movie theaters, I was actually at Northtown Shopping Mall in Blaine, Minnesota. And on one particular day, there was a group that was set up in the middle of the mall. They had like a viewing kiosk. And what they were doing is they were showing movie trailers, and then they would ask people for a review or to take a survey afterwards. And on this particular day I was there, they were showing Hackers. And they asked me if I wanted to check it out, and I did, and I watched it, and then they asked me for my review afterwards. And I remember the standout thing I told them. I said, well, I really like the music. And then I kind of talked a little bit about it more, and then they sent me on my way, more or less. And for whatever reason, I never did see the movie in the theaters. I don't know why. The movie's PG-13, and I was 14 or 15 back at that time in 95, so I don't know why I didn't see it, but I don't know if maybe it had a really limited showing or it just so happened to fly past my radar. I don't know exactly what happened, but I didn't see it in the theaters, but I did see it when it eventually came out on cable. So I saw the movie, and I liked the movie, but once again, it was really the music that I was really most interested in. So I went out and I bought the movie soundtrack on CD, and I listened to it like almost every day. Just kind of fell in love with it, and then from there I just started to buy a lot of the albums from the artists that were on the soundtrack, like artists like Underworld, The Prodigy, and Orbital. And those are some pretty big acts at that time over like in the UK and other parts of the world. But it hadn't quite made its way over to America quite yet. It was kind of slowly making waves. And this brand of music that they were calling it electronica or techno music. And yeah, it just hadn't quite made its way over here yet. MTV wasn't playing those kinds of music videos yet. And it just really hadn't, it didn't really have a real outlet for that here in the United States. It was more of an underground thing kind of going on. So at that time they kind of had to resort to putting the music in movies and video games to kind of get the music out there. And in my case, it worked because I loved it immediately, and I just got really into it. So that was my cool thing with this movie, is that was actually my intro to electronica or techno music. And I'm sure I'm not alone. I'm sure there was a lot of people who really got into electronic music after seeing this movie. But the movie itself is very cool. Obviously, it has a lot to do with like computer hackers and stuff like that. And I won't tell you all about the movie. You know, you can go out and see it. But again, it was just the music that really did it for me. So that's my favorite thing regarding this movie. The next movie I'm going to give you here is Swingers. This stars Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn. It's also written and co-produced by Jon Favreau. Very cool movie. It kind of personifies 90s style hip to me, this movie does. The dialogue is just really good, really clever, very witty. A lot of memorable quotes in this movie. And I think this is actually Vince Vaughn's breakout role, I think, was in this movie. And I believe that Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn actually met on the set of Rudy, which was a college football movie. I believe they met on the set, and then they became friends, and then eventually Jon Favreau would go on to write Swingers, and I'm sure he decided that he wanted to put Vince in this movie, and from there, you know, his career just catapulted from there. But anyway, this is a very cool movie. Jon Favreau's character, he just kind of dealing with a breakup of him and his girlfriend. And he's kind of going through a tough time, and he wants to talk about it, but he doesn't want to talk about it. And frankly, all his friends are really sick of him talking about it. So they try to distract him. They try to cheer him up. They go bar hopping. They go to parties, and they take these spontaneous road trips to Las Vegas and things like that. So there's a lot of fun that goes with that. It's a very fun movie. Again, memorable quotes. And it has a pretty good soundtrack as well. I definitely, like the soundtrack. Also, if you like this movie, if you've seen this movie, I also recommend the movie Chef, which I believe it came out in either late 2014 or early 2015. I'm not really sure. I saw it last year in 2015. But yeah, really great movie. That one's actually written, directed, and produced by Jon Favreau. But yeah, that's a really good movie too. So I recommend that one as well. The next movie I'm going to give you here is High Fidelity. This stars John Cusack, Jack Black, and this newcomer woman. I believe her name is Iben Hajeli. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is a very, very fun movie, very, very cool movie. Basically, John Cusack's character, he owns and works at his own record store. And but he's also dealing with a breakup as well. His girlfriend has just broken up with him. And so he's kind of going through this what does it all mean phase. And he starts to flash back a lot to his younger days and trying to think about all the times that girls either broke up with him or rejected him in some way. And he just tries to look back and then maybe possibly learn something from it, just to try and just figure out what is so wrong about him. Why do they keep, leaving him, more or less? Or just very, very good movie, very fun movie. And at the record store, John Cusack works with these two other guys. One of them is Jack Black. And Jack is just so funny in this movie. And I actually have to believe a lot of it was probably ad-libbed. I find it kind of hard to believe that everything that he says was in the script, because it's just so funny. And I just have to believe that some of it had to have been ad-libbed. But yeah, really great movie. And of course, the backbone of this movie is music. So they talk a lot about music. John Cusack's character was also a DJ at one point. So there's some talk about that as well. And just a very fun, very cool, very hip style movie. And I definitely recommend it if you've never seen it. The next movie I'm going to give you here is Before Sunrise. This stars Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, and was written and directed by Richard Linklater, who you might know from Dazed and Confused, who wrote and directed that film. Very cool movie. It's kind of like a romantic comedy, but it's probably more romantic than it is comedic. There is some humor, but it's not so funny. At least. Anyway, the dialogue is funny. It actually has more of what I consider to be intelligent style humor. It's not like a silly kind of humor. And that's actually my favorite kind of comedy, is more like intelligent kind of humor. But anyway, what this movie does is it kind of takes a lot of the sugar coating away from a lot of the other 90s movies, like kind of romantic movies or whatever you want to call them. And it's more of like a realistic kind of a movie. Kind of these two characters, Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, they just so happen to meet on this train in France. And we don't know until later in the film, but Ethan Hawke is dealing with a breakup as well. And Julie Delpy, she was out visiting her grandmother somewhere else. And they just so happen to meet on this train, and they talk and they get to know each other. They find out they have some things in common. They share a few laughs, and everything's going really great. And then eventually Ethan Hawke realizes, well, he has to get off at the next stop, and because he has to catch a flight the following morning. And so he talks to Julie Delpy, eventually convinces her to get off the train with him, and then just more or less just walk around the town of Vienna. And as the night goes on, they just talk more and more. They get to know each other better, and then eventually just fall in love. And what's so great about this movie, though, again, is the dialogue. It's just a lot of it is very believable, and some of the stories that they tell each other are they're very believable. And I probably believe that. Some of it probably is based on real things that happened, either to Richard Linklater, the writer, or maybe somebody he knew, or something like that, or maybe even Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, possibly even. We don't know that for sure, but very good movie, very believable. It's definitely one of my favorites. It has a cliffhanger ending where you don't know if these two are actually going to eventually end up together or not. There was 2 sequels that came after this movie, Before Sunset and Before Midnight, and I like those movies, but I'm just not a big fan of them because I don't really like the direction that they went with those movies. But so I kind of prefer to leave it with this cliffhanger ending. But there are certain parts about the sequels that I do like, and they are worth seeing if you like this movie. So, but anyway, this is one of my favorite movies. The next movie I'm going to give you here is Good Will Hunting. This stars Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Robin Williams, and Minnie Driver. This is definitely one of those movies that would probably end up on my best of movies too. Very, very good movie. I'm not a big fan of Matt Damon or Ben Affleck, but I gotta say they did an awesome job with this script. I think it's just incredibly brilliant. I think it was very well written. The casting is very good. The dialogue is really good. It's memorable quotes as well. But really, the movie, the thing I like best about this movie is probably Robin Williams' acting in this movie. I actually tend to prefer Robin Williams in his more serious roles. Movies like Dead Poet Society, Awakenings, this movie, and also 1 Hour Photo, if you've ever seen that one. A lot of people, they love his comedic performances, but for me, I mean, I like his comedic performance as well, but for me, I really prefer him in his more serious roles. I just think he was such a great actor, and he was really truly a big loss to the movie industry. But anyway, in this movie, Matt Damon's character, he's kind of like an average, normal kid. I'm guessing early 20s, and he works a very honest job, and he just kind of hangs out with his buddies after work, drinking and getting themselves into trouble and stuff. And he's kind of just living the normal life of a young, 20-something person, I guess. And but he's actually considered a genius, at least in mathematical terms. And his friends, they all know that he's very smart, but they don't really bother him. They don't just kind of leave him alone. But he just kind of goes about his normal life. But then eventually somebody discovers that he's actually very intelligent. He's very smart, and he has a gift for mathematics. And he decides that he wants to use it, but under one condition, that he sees a psychiatrist. And that's where Robin Williams comes in, is he's playing the role of a psychiatrist. And between those two, there is just so much great dialogue, and that's what really makes this movie, is this just as they go back and forth with this kind of witty banter and this very intelligent conversations that they have, and very thought-provoking things. And that's what really makes the movie for me. I really, really love this movie. And again, I'm not a big fan of Matt Damon, but I think he was really good in this movie. But as far as Robin Williams goes, I think this is probably my favorite movie that he ever did. And definitely, again, a big loss to the film industry. But yeah, one of my favorite movies of all time. The next movie I'm going to give you here is Some Kind of Wonderful. This stars Eric Stoltz, Leah Thompson, and Mary Stuart Masterson. This is a John Hughes movie, slightly lesser known John Hughes movie. Prior to this movie, John Hughes did Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Pretty in Pink, 16 Candles, and The Breakfast Club. And this movie is actually kind of like a more mature look at high school. The other movies kind of had a little bit more humor. This one has a little bit less humor, kind of focuses more on popularity in this movie. In this movie, Eric Stoltz's character, he's kind of just like a average, everyday kind of kid. He likes to paint. He works at a gas station. His best friend is a tomboy, and so to himself, he's considered kind of weird, at least to him. And he's not popular. Obviously, he's just kind of somebody that would be just kind of hanging around the background. That's his kind of character. And but eventually, he becomes interested in the most popular and most beautiful girl at the school, who is played by Leah Thompson. And of course, this strikes a chord with his best friend, who is Mary Stuart Masterson. There's conflict there. And then also, through the midst of it all, there's some conflict with the other people at the school as well. So there's a lot of really cool things going on in this movie. Very good movie, though. Very well written. Obviously, it's a John Hughes film, so there's a really good moral to the end of the story as well. But just a really great movie. I love the movie. Very good casting, very good dialogue, and pretty good soundtrack as well, I will say, too. Then the next movie I'm going to give you here is another John Hughes film, and it is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. This stars Steve Martin and John Candy. Again, kind of a departure for John Hughes. This movie has to do with adults this time. I don't know how many movies he did that featured adults, but I know that this is probably one of them, maybe even the only one. I have no idea. But anyway, in this movie, Steve Martin's character, he's a very busy business guy. And he's not seeing his family as much as he probably would like to. And he's getting ready to take this flight home to, I believe, Chicago, to see his family for Thanksgiving. And along the way, he just kind of runs into John Candy, and everything just kind of spirals from there. All these forces of nature just keep him from seeing his family on Thanksgiving. So along the way, he meets John Candy, and they get to know each other. And at first, they clash. Again, Steve Martin's character is very kind of serious, kind of a tight ass, and John Candy's character is kind of a little goofy and just kind of a little wild in his thinking. And he just kind of puts Steve Martin in these really weird, awkward situations, or again, he's trying to help him, but he just kind of he's not really a clod, but he just gets him in these really weird situations that he has to follow along with because he's trying to get home. So it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like an adventurous kind of ride. This is one of those movies that I feel like I have to watch every year. I usually watch it a day or two before Thanksgiving. And as far as John Candy goes, I almost have to believe that this was probably like kind of like a natural role for him. Obviously I didn't know John Candy at all personally, but when I watch this movie, a lot of times I just feel like it just seems like a very natural role for him. Like, he just seems like a lot of times he really wasn't acting. So my impression is that that's probably how he was kind of in real life. He's serious, but he's also very funny. And I don't know, just that's my impression every time I see the film, that I think that's probably the way that he probably really was, or at least that's the way I'd like to think that he was anyway. But again, just one of my favorite movies, and I highly recommend it if you've never seen it. The next movie I'm going to give you here is Taxi Driver. This is another one of those movies that would be on my best of list. This stars Robert De Niro, Sybil Shepherd, Harvey Keitel, and Jodie Foster. Very, very good movie. In this movie, Robert De Niro's character, he's a veteran. I don't know if he was in the war or just in the service, but he was honorably discharged. And as he says in the movie, he's having trouble sleeping at night. So he wants to find like a distraction. He wants a job. So he decides to take up this job as a cab driver. So he's driving around late at nights in this cab, and basically he just starts to see all this crime and the nastiness of the world. He keeps running into these situations and talking to other people and hearing about all these horrible things that are going on, and he sees nothing being done about it. And so through the movie, he just really struggles with everything that he's seeing and hearing. And then eventually he meets Jodie Foster's character, she's playing the role of like a 12 or 13-year-old prostitute. And of course this strikes a major chord with him because he's already struggling with what he's seeing and hearing, and he's having trouble dealing with that. And so he meets her, and then he gets to know her, and then eventually he decides that he wants to kind of just take matters into his own hands and do something about it. And I'm not going to give you the whole movie. I don't want to spoil it for you if you've never seen it, but it's just a great movie. The casting is extremely good, and again, the dialogue is very good. There are some funny bits in the movie that I really like, and definitely one of those movies I have to see every year. It's just such a great movie. The last movie I'm going to give you here is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. This stars Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro. It is based on a very popular book by Hunter S. Thompson. The movie is based on Hunter S. Thompson. That basically it's like this supposed wild ride that he took in the 1960s, a very drug-fueled ride. And very funny movie, although I'm not sure if the book was actually originally intended to be funny. But it's kind of like a dark comedy in this movie is. And what I usually tell people is, if you never took drugs before, then you're probably not going to understand a lot of this movie. You're not going to understand a lot of the drug references or a lot of the comedy that's going on in this movie. Basically, his character, he's like writing this story, and he just starts taking all these drugs as to fuel this story. And also in the 1960s, there was a lot of politics going on, so they kind of touch on some of those subjects as well. But again, there is so much drug use in this movie, and they really it really focuses on a lot of the issues with drug users, that deal with a lot of fear and claustrophobia and paranoia. A lot of those things that go along with it, because as you can imagine, when you're doing drugs, or at least most drugs, that it just kind of amplifies everything. So that's kind of what this movie does. It kind of just amplifies all these things, that like the fear and the claustrophobia and the paranoia and the personal issues and the personal interactions that we have every day to day. And but yeah, very funny movie though. I mean, I don't want. It sounds serious and it sounds kind of scary, and maybe parts of it are, but really, again, if you're someone who has probably done drugs, that you're going to understand a lot of the movie, and you're going to find it funny because it has a light heart. It makes fun of certain things, about the drug use and drug users. So, but it is a very good movie, very fun movie, and very memorable quotes in this movie. Just a great movie through and through, and just one of those movies I have to watch every year. But so anyway, this has been my top 10 favorite movies. If you enjoyed what you watched, please make sure to like, comment, or subscribe, and I'll see you next time.